Всем привет, друзья! Сегодня у нас вторая часть, у нас опять в гостях Энрико, и сегодня мы разберем обработку вокала вместе с Энрико. Энрико покажет свои техники и посмотрим, что он использует на практике. Okay, let's go.
Okay,
Dive
let's
in.
go. Hello, everybody, again. So today we're gonna go kind of short, and we're gonna talk about some vocal treatment. Now, a little intro to that. I mean, there is a lot of vocal videos and information you can find on the web, and some are good, some are not. And the point is with vocals is you always have to see and apply whatever is the best for the vocal that you have. Because, you know, most of the time you find vocals that are really well recorded. So it's easy to treat a very good recording, but sometimes you have to go like halfway or compromising if you don't do the recording. As far as the recording goes, also I want to say that it's really crucial to have good microphone, of course, but also have a good mic pre, I would say. You don't have to spend billions of dollars on mic pre's or microphone, but the point is you need to have this kind of a vocal chain for you, especially if you want to do it as a business, because there's something you don't notice on the vocals until you actually go to mix them. If you have a good ear and you know your experience, it's easy to recognize it. But if you don't, you think you're recording well, but then you go to mixing, and the minute you start to compressing the vocals, you start bringing up stuff that it's a problem of the room, problem of the microphones, problem that you don't have the real good harmonics for the mic pre's. So it's one of the only instruments that I would say that you really need to actually think about the chain, because the guitar you can reamping, we see, bass you can go DI, you can fix a lot of stuff, but vocals is not that you can really do so much. You don't really put any strange effects on vocals, and you need to have the basic, the fundamental recording has to be done well, like in a classical music, kind of, so to speak. So today we have a session. And this session was recorded in Cape Town in South Africa. There's a band called Rudimentals. They've been up and down doing a couple of festivals and stuff. It's a huge, as you can see, this session is unmixed, but it's like there's a lot of people playing. There's percussion, drummers, guitar, few vocals, and couple of drums section and everything. So. We're starting with the session without any mixing stuff. There is just a rough, as you can see, there are some basic levels, but no effects at all. So usually what I recommend when you start mixing the vocals, one good technique, you can choose whatever you want, but one good way to go is to actually have already what is called the TV mix. So what is the TV mix? TV mix is the mix, what you think is a good mix without the vocals. Because it's called TV mix because back in the days, now you have a computer, you can do it anytime, but back in the days, you record a song in 1980, and then you have to perform it on TV, just the singer, like maybe 3 years later. And what was done, you have the TV mix that was back into the original mix. So basically you mix down only the mix and you mute the vocals. So you're always gonna have like a karaoke kind of track that you can use on TV. Now it's easy to go with the computer, you just mute the tracks and you do whatever you want. But back in the days, you have in the big studio, you rent a big studio, you're mixing, so what you have that day is gonna be gone. So you wanna just have these options. So anyways, that's why it's called TV mix, if you want to know that. But anyways, you go back to this thing. So you would really want to have the track kind of mix it for many reasons. First of all, you don't want to have strange like spike in volume, and second, you kind of really need to have like an overall tone and timbre of the mix, because you know most of the stuff you're gonna do with the vocals is gonna be actually to fit in the mix. Now the reality is also, especially in the last 10 years, that you can actually use the vocals as the leader. I mean, it's always the leader inside the mix, so you can sidechaining, or they're like specific plugins, third company plugins that actually they dive down the mix spectrum in the middle to fit the vocals. So the vocals is always gonna stand up, okay? So what I'm doing today is halfway, because I mean, we're not mixing here. I give you some suggestion, I give you some little tips, and then you can actually incorporate all this different sidechaining technique or plugin techniques. So we have 3 singers. Actually, that's why I'm using for this 15 minutes example, I'm using only this section of the song, because again, it's a big song. As you can see, actually I highlight three vocal tracks, but actually all of these are vocals. So it's a little pain to actually manage all the vocals, because maybe they sing just in few parts, but there's a lot of people. There's 4 main singers. Now we're dealing with 3, and we have a lot of the background vocals. So in the mixing process, believe it or not, now I'm gonna do compression, EQing, and effects, but most is also the automation thing and the way you're gonna set some of the background. We're gonna be talking a little bit about the background vocals treatment. That's what I do, and that's what I learned during my experience. So we have basically 3 vocals, as you can see, 1, 2, repeating the 1 and the third one. So these guys are actually very different in accent, because this guy is from Zimbabwe, which is one of the south middle region in Africa. This guy is actually originally from Jamaica, and this is a New York guy. So you can even hear the different approach to the vocal. And remember that this is very important. When you mix vocals, I mean, usually you mix English or your native language. But sometimes you mix, like me, in India or in Latin America or this thing, you mix a different kind of like languages and tonalities. So it's very important on my standpoint, to understand what's going on. Good way is to know the lyrics. Actually have a piece of paper where you see the lyrics. Maybe you don't understand everything if you're doing Korean, but if you actually have everything written down in Roman character, you can actually kind of understand if all the things that you're doing, they're not gonna conflict, like the S, the P, the B, and all of that. Because some words, therefore, you are not really understandable. Maybe it's the crucial word for the mix. Okay, I know it seems to be a logical thing, but sometimes you lose track of the stuff. Okay, so here is everything is in English, but like with different kind of type. So let's listen first of all. Jamaican, Zimbabwe guy, and the New York guy now. Hussein is official. Tell me what's the issue? Like a rap vibe. Fans screaming the Buddha a long time. This is like a middle section of this like reggae type. So first of all, also you need to understand what is the destination, and you're gonna mix rock vocals different than reggae vocals, okay? But on the other side, you kind of have to have your way of doing. I always have my way of doing. What I mean by that, I actually now I'm not gonna work on this vocal, so let me get these guys out of your way so you don't actually get strange thing. Let's go make an active, okay? Let's pretend this is the only vocals that I have, but which is not. So what I'm gonna actually do, I'm gonna use a very American way of doing it, which is creating a 3 auxiliary stereo track. Let's see if it's actually good, okay? Because remember, you always put the effects. I mean, it's normal for people, but it's not really so understand. Let's move stuff so you don't get confused. Here we go. So I always create auxiliary. You always have an auxiliary. What is called in the big boards is called the returns. And because there's a bunch of reasons why you don't want to put the effect on the actual instrument. Sometimes you do, don't get me wrong, especially if you experiment or you do something strange. But usually you don't, because you're always gonna have, if this is your vocal fader channel, you're always gonna have the effect separate. So you can have control of the main vocal and then control the effect. So there's a bunch of stuff that happens. First of all, the vocals is mono, most likely. And your room effect is gonna be a stereo effect. So you need 2 kind of tracks. Otherwise, the software makes you do it. That doesn't mean that this is the right way to go. Okay, so that's why you still keep your mono instrument so you can actually change the panning. And you have control on that, and then you have a separate effect which is going to be stereo. Then this is the first reason. Second reason is actually you can automate. You want this effect on the chorus and this effect on the verse and vice versa, and you can change it. Plus, very important, you can EQ the stuff. Usually reverbs, you EQ the reverb. Reverbs have the tendencies to emphasize the low end. So sometimes, if you know that, you either have to go and look strange low tone, or you can actually use it to tone shape, like to add some boost, some low. So remember, the reverb is not only a room, it's actually something really useful for the tone shaping. Plus, you can chain them, so you can send one to the other one. You can do this for the electric guitar, I do a lot. I chain the delay to the reverb. So this kind of stuff, everything is controllable. I know you can automate the plugins, but it's not the same thing, first of all. And also remember, the effects has to be 100%. 100% means that you're using the 100% of the effects. If I put my effect on the actual track, I need to change the wet control, which is not the way to go. Back in the days, you have the output here in the studio, the output here, and this like lexicon, 2290, whatever, everything was to 100% wet because you want them to be just wet, you know? Again, the same thing, principle, main, dry, and the wet. Okay, so this is the reggae. So basic rule is make the reggae. So for reggae, you definitely want to get something which sounds like a slap thing. Then I'm gonna have some kind of reverb processing, and I'm gonna have some delay. I'm not gonna do any chorusing. Sometimes I do some chorusing. Sometimes I do some detuning thing a little bit, like a little track. You can actually divide. You can go very crazy with this stuff. You can try, if you have a really clean setup, you can actually divide the vocal spectrum and have something feeding, just the low end feeding something and the high end feeding something else. But we're gonna go really basic now. Basic means that so this is my setup, and then I'm gonna put the plugins. Of course, let me actually start doing the actual chain for it. I'm gonna prepare it. I'm not gonna touch it yet. So let's see, so 73, and then something that I'm using, maybe it's 75 and 77, okay? Here we go, 77. Okay, of course, stereo sense, and we're gonna go for this, a little setup here, 73, 74, 75, sorry, of course, and 77. All right, that's very, very easy, okay? As you see, because again, there is a lot of stuff you can change, but so that's why I want to address. Of course, I need to raise the fader here. On my setup, I usually have it on unity gain already, but I need to do this. Let me see if I can do it on everybody now. Yes, I can do it on everybody like this, I believe. Here we go. You can set this thing on your device to be automatic or not. And it's always in post, okay? So I'm not pressing any pre here. I'm just going in post. Post meaning that if I change the volume of my on my chain, if I go down with the automation or whatever of my vocals, I don't need to move the fader or the reverb. It's gonna, since it's post fader, it's gonna just go down the level because I'm gonna feed less the reverb, so I'm gonna get the less reverb. Okay, so that's the way to go. So post. Again, you are open. It's like driving a car. Once you know the basic 1, 2, 3, 4 gear, but then you can improvise a little bit. You know, you can depend on the type of track, so to speak. So all the rules is good to know it, because then you can bend them, you can use them a different way, okay, you can have a different kind of results, okay? So I'm going very, very academic here, which is the way it should be going. And by the way, since I know the way it's gonna go, I'm gonna go down with my effect, and just for me, I'm gonna have a group called, if I can have it, here we go, effect chain. Effect chain, okay? So I always gonna have a independent overall control, but also if I want sorry, I'm gonna have independent control. Okay, right now I need independent control. I can mute them, ready to go. So, but before doing that, of course, I need to do some signal processing, which we are here for. Now, what is important about the vocals? In live situation, it's kind of crucial, but you kind of have to have a compromise, because in live situation, you don't know how the singer is gonna sing in the next 10 seconds. So it's not that you can really anticipate the compression precisely, because you can really do it. Because if you highly compress or over compress, what's gonna happen? You're gonna crush the note if the singer sounds louder or if you got closer and everything. So usually for the recording and for live situation, you have a different kind of settings. You go mild, you have a different gain reduction. In this case, my situation, let me actually get you the actual files a little bit better. For example, here, now this is natural for singing, you know. What I can see here, I have some peak here, and the average, you can see the average of the vocals here, and the average volume. But you are always gonna have some peak. Actually, it's always good to have an experienced singer. Good singers, what they do, they tune themselves. They kind of like compress themselves, because if they have the headphones, and this is very important, give them a good headphones listening. This is very important, with a little reverb so they can have some effects. Then usually if they are experienced, they know how to do this. They go close miking, because close miking is gonna give more the lips noise and everything, and far miking, you know. And so they're gonna, if they go up with the voice, so they kind of hear themselves, they kind of automate their vocals automatically, you know. Of course, this is not science. There's a lot of art on doing that. So let's actually see. Okay, I'm gonna go really fast, but to give you the actual overall input. But of course, this thing needs a little dedication. Actually, let me get a little bit better view. Here we go. Go back to the original. So I'm gonna actually have a vocal chain with different compressors. So on my case, I've been using my Antelope ones. I'm a big fan on the LA28 and everything. But as you can see, we have a bunch of stuff we can have here, definitely. So what I'm gonna actually doing, I'm actually using my LA2A, the LA2A, of course, emulation. I think it's recalling, okay. And here we go, it's the classical LA2A look. Now, the good thing about the LA2A, why are you using this machine? And that's something that I always say, why you see this kind of machine replicated in a lot of brands, because that's the way to go. I mean, all the brands that you guys know, they have an LA2A, an 1176, a Pultec, and a bunch of machines. They're always gonna see them. And that tells you that the actual historically and still, this is the actual main machines. It's like when you have a guitar, a good studio guitar is a Fender guitar, it's a Gibson guitar. So LA2A, SM57, it's a normal, simple, but very good, efficient mic that you can use in a lot of situations to save your day. This kind of machines, like 1176 and the Pultec for the EQ side, are actually like workhorse. They've been using these machines many years, many decades, and they're very good. Actually, this one, I know the sound of this one, so you always kind of get the vibe of it. What it does, so the compression, remember this, very short lecture about compression, this is not the case to do it, but compression, basically you have a situation where you have a high peak of the instrument or the vocals and the low peak. So you have a softer part, what I call it, and a louder part. Now, I know that you guys know the compression is like basically squish down the peak, but you don't really need to do that, in the sense that the thing that is squishing down is the result of the actual squashing down, is the result of the compression, but actually that's not my target. My target is to be able to hear all my vocal track in an intelligible way inside the mix. So I not only need to hear this, which I hear, but I also need to balance this one to raise it up, okay? So back in the days, now we have a lot of machines, you can actually do this. But back in the days, that was not possible. The only way to do it, to raise this thing up, remember, this is the target. You could only affect the peak. So you would do something like this, and then raise it up. That's why you have two compression stages. The first one is the actual threshold and gain reduction, which you're gonna read in the meter, of course. That's what the meter for. You always need the meter. It can be a needle, it can be a LED, it can be the LED like a DBX160 on the studio. You have a lot, but you always need to watch or at least know what's going on. So how many dB you're gonna cut the peak. And then the second momentum or moment of the compression is actually, so first you cut and then finally you raise it. So you're gonna be able to hear what you were not hearing so much. Now, this is a really easy situation. Here, I can see that there's not so much. this thing is gonna be easy to fix. I mean, fix because you always put a compression in the vocals. Why you say that? Because you don't do it in classical music, but in vocals you do, because the compression is not only fixing the volumes of the overall dynamic range, but it's also doing something else if you think about it. If your vocals are already pretty good in volume and in steadiness, what is happening, the compression is gonna get out the softer part of the sound, not the volume, but the tone. So, for example, if I compress my voice, you can hear my voice. My voice, if I compress it, I'm a kind of nasal voice in a little bit. If I compress it in this way, actually in the way that I'm gonna show, I'm gonna raise all my sound, which is actually the low end. And it's very useful also for female vocals, because female, they don't have maybe so much low end, most likely. So a good compression is gonna balance also the low end. On your perspective, this is the highest. It's gonna kind of balance the low end. So you always put compression, you know, and you not only put one, but you put 1, 2, or 3, even 4. This is called the serial compressor. So in this case, what I'm gonna be doing, I just wanna actually, that's why this is a leveling amplifier also called, because we don't have attack and release, we don't have a ratio, we're just gonna do a simple
set the thing there, let up the thing there, set the thing, then I bend up
and
the
actually
thing there.
you cannot hear that the compression is a little bit the recording,
Set the thing there, let up the
it is not a great recording. This track they're not being recorded properly. There's no mic pre, so you kind of hear some kind of fizziness here and there.
set the thing there, let up the thing there, set the thing,
All
then
right.
I bend up the thing there, set the thing there, let
Now,
up
we
the
gotta
thing
get
there,
control.
set the thing, then I bend up.
And we have again a peak reduction. So for the peak reduction, I'm gonna actually just use it and have like a little correction on the 2-3 dB, no more than that. And actually, maybe on this guy, let's see what happens here. First of all, on the all night, you got more gain reduction.
All night.
Okay, that's why my
night.
peak is actually, the more I go down with the threshold,
All night.
the thing is gonna go this way. The opto ways is gonna actually be kind of gentle. I can actually have a 1176 here too. Actually, for these vocals can be good. Let me show you a different option. Different option would be to have 1176. So I'll go back to my envelope and I go to 1176, which I have to look. Here we go. Effect technology. Sorry. Here we go, and we got it. Now this is more a complicated kind of compressor, and you need to set the ratio for this one. So 4:1 is always good, because 4:1, you remember, the more you go up, the more you go. If you press everything, it's a limiter. The more you go up, the more compression ratios you're gonna have. So there's always a certain amount of track of vocal that is not gonna be crushed by the threshold. That is done because this is music. So you kind of need to have some of the musical content. So in this case, let's see what happened here. Let me actually do this here. Here we go. So
All night.
here we go. Now
Bend
the
up
fat,
thing there,
it reacts in a
root
different
white,
way.
let up the
Actually, I
thing there.
prefer it here. So let's do a little loop here. We are in studio, we are not live, so we have some kind of time, right? So
All night.
you see on the peak,
Bend up the thing there, root white,
actually
let
there's a
up the-
lot. So if I go to the left, I don't
Bend up
compress
the
it,
thing there, root white, let up the- all night.
but actually I need the peaks.
Bend up the
So you
thing
see,
there, root white, let
But
up the-
all the
night.
spikes
Bend up the thing
is
there,
giving like between
root white, let up the- all night.
3 and 4.
Bend up the thing
Actually, I
there,
want to
root
a
white,
little
let
less.
up the-
Now, secret number 1. If you have a lot to compress, don't squash and squish your vocal with watt compression, and try to get a -10 of gain reduction, right? Usually the technique here, the technology and the idea, the concept is actually, if you have a big dynamic range, don't squash it with 10 dB and then raise it, but do in serial. So like 1, 2, and 3. So basically you have one first compression does 4 dB, and then you make the volume right. You compensate. Then the second compression, and then the third compression. So at the end, if you listen to like the Muse, you know the band The Muse. I always think about the Muse, because the Muse, if you listen to the mixes, the vocals is not over. You know, in Italy, the Italian songs with the vocals are really over the mix. That's easy. I mean, that's easy. That's very easier to mix. But we actually want to have the vocal down in the mix, so not so high. You really need to have a control of the volume because you really want to hear exactly every word. So the only way to do it is to make the vocal range not that big, but make it small. So that's why you need to make it small, and that's why you need more compression. So in this case, I'm actually...
Burn up the thing there, rude boy, let up the all night.
Let's do it a bit
Burn
more.
up the thing there, rude boy,
Now,
let
I have
up
a
the
little-
all night. Burn up the thing there, rude boy,
Okay.
let up the all night. Burn up the thing there.
Now, you can use the
rude boy,
compression-
Let up the all night.
Now, you can use the compression to boost stuff, but I don't recommend that. I mean, I use it sometimes. It's true. The output, even called the makeup, is going to actually boost the volume. But most of the time, what happens, you kind of really want to have the same perception, because you want to actually don't change. Imagine you're in the middle of the mix and you spend time to make a right vocal balance. And at the end, you just want to add the compression to get more steadiness. If you don't match the volume, of course, all the automation reference that you have, they're going to be gone. So a good way is to compensate. So in this case, look, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually invert the thing. You see, this is stuff that I'm deciding right now. So I'm actually going to have,
All night.
and then get the up to 2. So
All night.
here we go. So
Burn up the
this is
thing
going to be a
there,
little bit
rude
less.
boy,
It's
let
very
up the
strong. It's kind of strong on this one.
all night. Burn up the thing there, rude boy, let up.
Now, I don't know if it's clear for you, but I think it is. Here is very clear. Now you hear what is happening now. I'm not fixing the volume anymore. I'm getting some other strange stuff, like so the breath. All night and all the end of the words.
All night. Burn up the thing there, rude boy, let up the all night.
Okay, so that's why if you think about in the 80s, the de-esser was very important, because when you compress a lot, the first thing you're gonna bring up is the actual S and P of the vocals that you don't hear when you mic, but then if you compress a lot, that's something that's gonna go up. If I compress very much myself, all this S myself is gonna go up. So in the 80s, they didn't like it, they put the de-esser, which is a compression for the S. But now it's kind of back to, people like it, so it's up to you this. But can be very useful, especially if you need to hear S's. In the rap stuff can be very useful.
All night.
Now, right
Burn
here,
up the thing
there is
there,
some sort
rude-
of saturation that I kind of like. Let's leave it this way. Nothing is undoable, guys. So let's actually do the same thing here, but actually this should be easier because it's steady and it got more low end.
Real done, spliffing on me on.
So right here, I know exactly that I'm just gonna go really with just balancing, and I'm gonna get 2 compressions. Of course, I need to set it up.
Real done, spliffing on me on. Sound link a gal figure mash up the thing, yeah. Real done, spliffing on me on.
Oh, wow.
Sound link a gal fi-
And I also get a little final, so more low end.
Real done, spliffing on me
There
on.
we go.
Sound link a gal figure.
Here, the solid come down, and also the low end comes up.
Real done, spliffing on me on. Sound link a gal
Okay?
figure.
It's more, there's more, I call it there's more on the vocals, more steady, okay? And it is. And again, this vocal doesn't really need so much fixing. It just needs to be emphasized. So let's see, the New York guy, I think, is gonna be the same thing, which is, actually, let's start with this guy and see what happens. Of course, you need to reset all the time. I'm just copying it to be fast, but then I need to reset it.
Hussein is official, tell me what's the issue. 10,000 fans screaming.
You hear more Hussein, all the end.
Hussein is official, tell me what's the issue. 10,000 fans screaming
Okay.
the root
The
of
volume
men.
is pretty much the
Hussein
same,
is
eh?
official, tell me what's the issue. 10,000.
I really believe that the Antelope did a great work, because, you know, I have to say, every brand, like I was saying, they replicate this stuff. But the technology to replicate this stuff is not easy. And, you know, as an Antelope user, I really find these native plugins actually very, very good, because they really give you something back.
Hussein is official,
let's
tell
get
me
the other
what's
one.
the issue. 10,000 fans screaming the rudimental. Hussein is official,
less
tell me
here.
what's the issue. 10,000 fans screaming the rudimental.
Yeah, why
Hussein
not?
is official, tell me what's the issue.
Actually, these vocals are really, really up with the vocals, with the volumes. I can use them. I can use this last stage of the compressor to raise the volume. I'm not gonna do that now. Let's see. I want to just go do something quick.
Hussein is official, tell me what's the issue. 10,000 fans screaming the rudimental. Hussein is official.
I think, let me just get some sort of balance.
Tell you now, set the thing there, let up the thing there. there. Set the thing, then I bend up the thing there. Real done, spliffing on me hand. Sound link a girl figure mash up the thing, yeah, yeah. Bend up the thing there. Rude boy, let up the thing there. Hussein is official, tell me what's the issue.
It's very cool vibe. Actually, this was easy. But as you can see, by default, I put 2 compressors. Why? Because I not only need to fix little spikes, which I did with the first compressor, I'm bringing up all my vocal nuances. You know, when you got close, that's why I really recommend to do whispering. If you do some whispering recording, go close to the mic. Because even if you don't hear very well in the recording, in the mixing, by doing this, you're gonna hear all the sounds that actually make something alive. Think about Billie Eilish, think about and Mariah Carey back in the 80s and all of that. Now, let's do some vocal chain now. I'm running. So the first one I wanna just go, I'm actually can use a very simple slap back. So as far as the envelope, I may use a delay. So here we go. So I got the memory card brigade, and we can actually go for this combination stuff. Let's actually hear some sound. So, of course, I need to raise to 0 dB, but I'm not gonna use the 0 dB. Let's actually just see what's happening with these vocals.
Real done, spliffing on me hand. Sound link a girl figure mash up the thing, yeah, yeah. Real done, spliffing on me hand. Sound link a girl figure mash up the thing, yeah, yeah. Real done, spliffing on me hand.
There we go.
Sound link a girl figure mash up. Real done, spliffing on me hand. Sound link a girl.
This is very flexible one because you can do chorus and vibrato, but what I want is the typical reggae effect. And the reggae effect is nothing really unbelievable in the sense that the reggae is actually effect is an emphasization of what happened even the Beatles recording. You know, there is a Beatles setup which is called the John Lennon kind of slapback delay. Somebody made a calculation of the repetition of the echo that John Lennon got on his vocals back in the Beatles track, and we can kind of go to between 160 170 milliseconds. So that's why I type in 162, but I can go 166 or whatever. And what is the effect? The effect is actually you have only one repetition, that's why the feedback is down. And you want to have like a doubling thing, which you can call doubling, but it's actually really more like a vintage thing. Check this out.
Real done, spliffing on me hand. Sound link a girl figure.
You see, no repetition.
Real done, spliffing on me hand. Real done.
So, of course, it's too much, but remember, in order to hear effect, you're always gonna need to actually erase it. Of course, I'm not done with the main vocals. I want to EQ it a little bit. I'm gonna go in that thing really, really short. So as far as the reverb, I'm actually need to use like let me actually just use a normal reverb. Let's say the Avid situation. We can use for now a normal reverb because I mean I have my specific ones, but I mean for my purpose, I just want to give you a regular reverb. So what I do is really important. Now the preset is very important. You can try, of course, to listen up what's happening. And a good way to do now lately is to do like a plate reverb. You can do. Plate reverb is more like, it's of course, an emulation of the plating back in the 60s and the 70s. And it's, for example, it's good reverb that's being used on snare drums for a long times. But the plate is gonna give you, if you look, the plate is gonna give you a small decay. Of course, you can change it. It's gonna be different from the room for sure, or for a hall, of course. And it's gonna be like a short thing. Now, I don't wanna use the plate now. I wanna really use the reverb. I just wanna give you some inputs here. So instead of going here, I'm just gonna go for a regular room. Then I will see what's happening with the decay. But the most important thing that I'm gonna be setting is the actual pre-delay. The pre-delay is the actual distance. Yeah, it's the word to define the distance, the time distance between your input and the develop and the starting of the reverb. So the reverb, for example, if I put this thing, just to give you an example, to 170, which is something that I like, over 140, I like it. Even to 200, 210, depends on this context. What happened, instead of having the note and then the reverb right away, the reverb is gonna wait 170 milliseconds before activate the actual reverb. Which is, what is the advantage of this? Two advantages. The first one, you're gonna have a cleaner sound. Remember when back in the days there was a lot of reverb on the vocals? It was a trend, but also it was no control on this stuff. And sometimes I review I do some feedback for mixes, and people always ask me, okay, there's too much reverb, if I don't put it, it's like a dry. So it's not really a volume thing, it's the way the reverb is set up. If you make a distance between the original instrument and the actual reverb, you have, first of all, a cleaner start of every input. And you can even, by doing this, you can have more control on the reverb tail, and you can actually even raise it, believe it or not. So if I go here, the only thing that I'm doing here, I don't do so much, I just want you to apply to any reverb that you have as a starting point. So the decay is up to you. Remember, the decay it's a value theoretically and physically to minus 60 dB. But this is the most important thing, pre-delay. So the pre-delay sounds like this.
Real done, spliffing on me on.
So if you notice, the beginning of every input is cleaner. So you have a tail after, which is maybe is not appropriate for this genre now, 1.8 seconds of decay, but it's clean. The good thing is like no washing.
Real done, spliffing on me
so
on.
the real down, the r is everything clean.
Real done, spliffing.
You can even see in the meter. When I start the vocal, the actual meter of the reverb is gonna actually starts way after, which is 170 milliseconds, which is not little. Remember, the human here, after 20, 25 milliseconds, they start to hear the doubling thing. That's why for snare drums, you stay in that range, because you have to have the snare and the reverb together. In this case, it's different. I want to separate.
Real done, split.
Okay, so let's leave it there. Now, as far as another delay, let's do a stereo delay this time. So I'm going to multi-channel. I need to have something really basic even this way, because I need something that makes me have control on both sides. That's why it's multi-channel. Now, the point about this is really, you definitely have to time-based delay. I mean, most of the time, this is 103 as my tempo. So what I do, I can choose maybe 8 notes. I don't remember what I did actually. Some feedback, so I'm gonna have some repetition. And you can actually do the same thing on here. Steve Vai does a lot of stuff with the actual dotted, so it's gonna add a value. So you're not gonna have a repetition like this, but a repetition that goes like this, still a musical value. Another school is to have a little difference. So if this was, for example, 1291, I can go to 310, like 10 to 20 milliseconds, not too much, still with some, unfortunately the feedback doesn't really tells me exactly how many counting I have here of the repetition, but I can guess around 4 or something like this. Let's see.
Real done, spliffing on me.
Yeah, 4 or 5, okay? And it's not going like this musically, but it's going musically one side and the other side is a little bit moving. We can even go again with the dotted stuff, you know, if you go like this and like this, okay? Sorry, like this. But I think
real done, spliffing on me on.
That can be interesting, especially for the reggae. It can be interesting, you know. This is remember, the dotted notes are really good for delay, also for the lead guitar, because it helps sticks it up. Now, I want to add the final touch on my vocals because I know I'm gonna need it. I'm gonna actually have some EQing. If you have a good EQ, use it. If you have a normal digital EQ, don't go for it. So, as I was mentioning before, I'm gonna actually go for my Pultec, which is, again, this is a machine that every brand do. Here we go. And it's believe it or not, it's called the Pultec curve because you can boost and attenuate stuff at the same time, so it gives you this different shape. You can actually see it. But the good thing about this Pultec, watch out. This is the Q, okay, the bandwidth. But then you can only act between 20 and 100 hertz and 3K and 16K. So no mids, which is unbelievable to be a vocals. But actually, let's check this out. I'm just gonna apply it to all of them, of course, and then I'm gonna change it. Now, what is the point of this one? Usually I add my Pultec while I'm mixing. So while I have my track open. So now I don't have the track open, I can actually try it.
Set the thing there, light up the thing there, set the thing there.
Now, what it does, first of all, it's very transparent. Check this out. I can boost 4 key. Let me boost all the way so you can hear.
Set the thing there, let up the thing there. Set
Of course, it's too much, and naturally you kind of hear the poor recording here. But actually, check this out a little bit.
Set the thing there, let up the thing there. Set the thing there.
He opens up the vocals. Usually it does in a more natural way, but this is not a great recording. But check this out. I also can boost 100 hertz.
Set the thing there, let up the
This
thing
is very
there.
much.
Set the thing then I bend up the
So the
thing
change
there.
here
Set
is
the
it-
thing there, let up the thing there. Set the thing
It's a little
then
bit
I
more
bend up
open.
the thing.
For sure, it's gonna do. So the key here is to be transparent. Transparency is the key. So you don't want to hear a digital, even though you hear sometimes in. If you really are experienced, you do.
Real done, spliffing on me on. Sound link a gal figure mash up the thing. Real done, spliffing on me on. Sound link a gal
too
figure
much.
mash up the thing. Real done, spliffing
Let
on
me
me
help
on.
him with the-
Sound link a gal figure mash up
There's
the
a lot
thing.
of low
Real
end that
done,
he has,
spliffing on me on.
but the actual
Sound link a
boosting
gal figure.
makes it a little bit more softer.
Real done,
Like
spliffing
smoother.
on me on. Sound link a gal figure mash up the thing. Real done, spliffing on me on.
A little bit more
Sound
presence.
link a gal figure mash up.
Don't go crazy with this stuff. In the beginning, don't go crazy with this stuff. You're always gonna lose stuff if you boost too much. 3 here is a lot. Let's see here. Okay.
Saying is official, tell
Way
me
too
what's
much.
the issue. 10,000
But
fans
it's kinda
screaming
cool.
the rudimental. Saying is official, tell me what's the
And
issue.
let's see
10,000.
here. Actually, let me boost all the way up.
Saying is official,
This
tell me
3K,
what's the
4K,
issue. 10,000 fans screaming the
5K.
rudimental. Saying
bad.
is official, tell me what's.
Sometimes you hear this stuff.
Saying is official, tell me.
There's a lot. Of course, this is way too much. I'm actually.
Saying is official, tell me what's the
actually
issue.
gonna
10,000
stay
fans screaming
with
the
4, I think.
rudimental. Saying is official, tell me what's the issue.
No,
10,000.
actually, I think I'm gonna go up.
Saying is official, tell me what's
something
the
like that.
issue. 10,000 fans.
Let's see. Now, situations without effect. Now you get a situation like this.
Tell you now. Set the thing there, let up the thing there. Set the thing then I
check this
bend up
out.
the thing there. Real done, spliffing on me on. Sound link a gal figure mash up the thing, yeah, yeah. Bend up the thing there, root wide, let up the thing there.
Saying is official.
Tell
Okay.
you now.
Now the reggae effects right
Set
here.
the thing there, let up the thing there. Set the thing then I bend
Right?
up the thing there. Real done, spliffing on me on. Sound link a gal figure mash up the thing, yeah, yeah. Bend up the thing there, root wide, let up.
Still clean. Check the it's very long tail. Now, in this case, I would go a little bit less,
Tell you now.
but it's clean
Set
because
the
I have a
thing
pre
there,
delay.
let up the thing there. Set the thing then I bend up
And
the
then
thing
last
there.
touch.
Real done, spliffing on me on. Sound link a gal.
Everything is there, guys. Huh? Now the secret here is to not go crazy with faders. That's why it's good to have a visual look at what's happening.
Tell you now. Set the thing there, let up the thing there. Set the thing then I bend up the thing there.
Now, if I really want to
Real
go,
done, spliffing
maybe
me
on these vocals more
Sound link
slap.
a gal figure mash up the thing, yeah, yeah.
let's hear
Bend
automation.
up the thing there, root wide, let up the thing there.
Saying is official, tell
Maybe
me what's
here
the
we'll
issue.
go back.
10,000 fans.
That's why it's really cool because you can automate all these lines, right? You can automate them as a unique thing. Let's say less effect for chaos. It's called chaos, or less slap back for Hussein. Right? That's why that is the beauty of the nowadays. But now check this out. Now everything is grouped. So let's listen with everything group, and then we can do it.
Set the thing there, let up the thing there. Set the thing then I bend up the thing there. Real done, spliffing on me on. Sound link a gal figure mash up the thing, yeah, yeah. Bend up the thing there, root wide, let up the
Example.
thing there.
Saying is official, tell me what's the issue. 10,000
Let's
fans
slap here.
screaming the rudimental.
And that is a very good starting point. So again, serial compression, EQing. If you cut, use some digital maybe. But if you boost, use some nice emulation. And a vocal chain always with reverb, delay, most of the time stereo. But the echo, the slap echo can be really useful because here you can go up. In normal pop you go down, but always give you this like strengthening idea of like doubling, but really subtle. You kind of hear, you feel the vocals a little bit more present. Here we go.
Вот вы увидели, как Энрико обрабатывает вокал. Это один из подходов. Возможно, в будущем, если у нас опять будет возможность и появится время, мы еще сделаем видеоурок. Посмотрите внимательно, повторяйте в ваших проектах, а также не забывайте в описаниях видео писать ваше мнение и какие цепочки вы используете для обработки. Также не забываем в описании поблагодарить Энрико за участие в этом видеоролике, потому что он делится с вами очень важной информацией. А я обещаю, что в скором времени мы с вами встретимся и поговорим про новые темы. Всем пока! Thank you, Enrico.
Thank you, Aram. Thank you, guys. See you next time.